So we actually have several, but the biggest one that comes to mind is multiple enable profiles, which ultimately allows a user to keep 2 active eSIM subscriptions in a phone simultaneously, right? On top of that, we also have device transfer. So these are 2 nice features that came along with the recent SGP 22 version 3 from GSMA. Device transfer ultimately allows the user to transfer from one mobile to the other seamlessly, so it certainly also improves the user experience. And multiple enable profile, it's likely to sparkle several launches of devices with eSIM-only capability.
So we see a major uptake in eSIM adoption for handset and consumer eSIM devices, and that is driven by high growth markets such as India, where the digital economy is really taking off. We see massive nationwide digital transformation programs supporting that. And also that comes from the drive towards more affordable devices so that such mass scale programs could take shape.
Well, I think in the last year we've seen some big changes. I think the first eSIM-only device in the US from one of the biggest OEMs in the world is a massive change in the industry, and that's obviously going to kind of evolve, and more OEMs are going to be adopting that. So we're going to see eSIM activations, which we're already seeing just with that one OEM, increase substantially. But beyond that, I think it's more also a change in the customer journey in terms of how they manage their eSIM, how they manage the settings on the device, and really that's where entitlements comes in, and something that G&D are now pushing pretty strongly in the market is the entitlement server. And I think overall, that user journey piece is really fundamental to kind of continued mass adoption through all the OEMs and the market in general.
It's more on the operational one, more for mobile network operator, where they need to have solutions that scale up because the usage is increasing, and also to have a way to manage the inventory in a digital manner and optimize it. And these are very important developments for them, and they need to be ready for that.
eSIM in the consumer market is in a phase of strong expansion. eSIM-only phones about to enter new markets after the US. More and more phones embed eSIM technology, including some mid-range phones. And device makers are improving yet again the user experience, thus boosting adoption. In that context, mobile operators need to get ready and must be able to rely on eSIM solutions that adapt to their constraints, that scale effectively, and that allow them to build innovative user experiences around eSIM.
So there are several great benefits that come along with SGP 32, and we're super excited that finally GSMA has released the specs. So the first great thing about it is that it does encompass several IoT devices that were previously not addressed with SGP 02. Low-powered capability constrained devices, or devices that cannot easily be reached within a short distance. And it also addresses several IoT protocols. So it's definitely going to sparkle great deployments around IoT.
Well, the eSIM for IoT specification is a resultant of many years of the industry collaborating for the broadest range of use cases that apply then for OEMs and device makers. One of the biggest changes it brings about is bringing the power of eSIM profile distribution to the OEMs and for device makers to really do fleet management on a massive scale for all of global devices.
Yes, I think it's going to be massive for the industry. I think it's kind of building on the consumer standards, so it should be very easy to adopt for even the carriers themselves without lots of new infrastructure. And I think from a user perspective, it really kind of starts giving them flexibility to be able to switch profiles, switch commercial agreements, and really kind of drive down the cost of ownership of connectivity as a whole, which we really need to see in order to really scale IoT in general.
So it's very important, I think, because it's a long-awaited evolution of the technology. eSIM in the machine-to-machine environment was pretty difficult to deploy in terms of remote provisioning services. So now the consumer approach has been taken to IoT. It's a very welcome change.
It is very important, and that's the reason why IDEMIA invested in that technology from the very early days. It covers all IoT devices and all IoT protocols. It simplifies a lot the integration. It allows mobile operators with an SMDP Plus to enter this market with no investment, thus bringing new connectivity providers to the ecosystem.
Yeah, so eSIM is here, right? It's certainly the future and it's here. From a perspective of compliance and standards, everything is ready and good to go. So it's mostly fine-tuning around certifications and also gains of efficiency from a production standpoint for the massive deployments to be in place. Certainly, once we get the first commercial launches using eSIM, using the technology, it's also going to represent great improvement, but we're also going to learn a lot from the actual commercial deployment. But it's just a matter of time until we start seeing deployments around the eSIM.
There are two things that OEMs constantly request around eSIM. Cellular technology development has been long, but development cycles take much longer. And so this is where we are focusing on speed to market with eSIM with robust security so that secure build for devices can come through.
So eSIM, yeah, is kind of really progressing well, and there's already big deployments. G&D are one of the leaders in the eSIM space and working with the chip manufacturers to ensure that it's enabled. And I think from a user perspective, you know, it really helps drive down the cost of your build of materials. It adds a layer of security because there's no kind of removable or tamperable element. So I think from a technology perspective, you know, we're there. And then I think really kind of driving the adoption just needs some more carrier engagement and more flexibility from the carrier community or MVNO community in general.
In order to scale the integrated SIM, the second flavor, the true integrated SIM, is what we could call an integrated eSIM actually, because it brings this flexibility we were talking about. And SGP32 is also super important for integrated SIM to be scalable. Because it brings all the benefits we've talked about, and integrated SIM with SGP32 is clearly a way to expand the possibilities for the IoT stakeholders.
We see several chipset makers adopting eSIM in the latest design, and IDEMIA is actively working with them. Two main things will allow adoption at a larger scale, strengthen the confidence of the market on the technology security, and the GSMA has released a certification specification on that topic, and specific use cases where eSIM brings great added value, such as very small devices or devices operating in hazardous environments.